Good morning. I say good morning because it is a good sunny morning. I didn't sleep well at all, and I blame this book. Not that it kept me up entranced reading it. It kept me up because something happened in it that was just disgusting and awful. and it came with no warning at all. I'm surprised that this book got published. And this apparently, according to probably their own hype a little bit, but I mean, I know some of this guy's books. I haven't read them, but this guy, James Herbert, is a best-selling author who topped the charts, horror charts, with things like The Fog, which was made into a film with I think it was Kurt Russell in it. And as I say, I haven't read others of James Herbert's books, but The Fog was a good premise for a horror movie, you know. So this is a book review of this book, even though I've only gotten that far with the book. But I feel it's important to give you a heads up if you ever want to read this thing. I wouldn't, because it's kind of, I found it really sick. Um, I know horror crosses this line, and I have my favorite horror authors. Right, a guy called John Lindqvist, a Swedish horror author, is I think my favorite horror author, and um, Stephen King is somebody I really got into. Haven't read loads of his books, but I really got into after reading The Dome, which isn't really, that was made into a TV series. And that isn't, it is kind of a horror book, but it's kind of going across genres as well, because he's very psychological. Horror is very psychological, but horror can be blood and gore and shocks, or it can be psychological, horrifying situations as well. And Stephen King did that beautifully in The Dome, and I just think his writing is so good, you know. And John Lindqvist goes more in the direction of um, taboo subjects, you know, like the first um, time I came across his stuff was seeing a movie again called, I don't know if it's the same name as the book. Let the Right One In is the name of the book anyway, but they did make a movie of it. And it was very interesting because it had a vampire theme, but with kids. And it had a whole psychological weirdness going on with it as well that was very interesting. But he's a very good writer as well. And I then went and read another one of his books in, I can't remember, is it The Harbour? But it was made into a movie as well. And it was just such an amazing horror movie with this guy looking for his son on an island. And the atmosphere of the book and everything was terrific. And it got very weird. And horror is great because you can bring in fantasy elements and everything. And it's very, brings your imagination in on really amazing journeys. So I'll compare this book, which is a horror fantasy book, right? And the blurb tells you that it's about fairies, right? Remember the fairy stories that you heard when you were a child, um, of tiny magical beings and elves, wicked witches and goblins and demons. But what if you found out they were true, and you could see the hell hags and demons touched the hero in it, called Tom, touched by perverted passions and corruption. That is the only hint there, the perverted passions of why they're perverted, that you're going to get in this book. And I was disgusted when I got to it. This book I wouldn't have bought for myself. It was in one of those free libraries, and I picked it up and I said, I'll read it sunny. I'll read in the garden. I'm doing gardening and taking knitting and book breaks while I'm doing it at the moment. So And soon we'll be drawing because I have a new pen going to arrive soon, an artist sketch pen, a refillable ink pen. So I'm looking forward to that. So, what was it that upset me so much? I'd started the book and I was enjoying it because it was about a guy. I'm going to give spoilers in this one. I said I never would give spoilers in my book. Videos. This one I'm going to give spoilers to because I don't want you to read it. I read it, so you don't have to. And I put the book away, meaning to destroy it because I don't want to give it out to anybody else. I don't want it to circulate. Um, and okay, the publishers, circulated it, but I'm not going to circulate it. But I started reading it and I was enjoying it for all the descriptions of nature in it and everything because the character goes back to his childhood home, which happens to be a big mansion. And he goes back there and he goes back to the often this kind of gate lodge or a small house on the grounds of a mansion. And he goes to stay in that small house, and there are forest areas and glades around it and everything. And he becomes aware of magical creatures in those glades, right? Now, the bit that was really shocking, I was getting along grand, and I was expecting some horror, but I wasn't expecting the type of horror that I ran into. Um, in the glades, he goes out for a walk on his first day there, and it's very early in the novel, so there's plenty more of this stuff coming up. He goes out for a walk into one of the glades and sees as he puts it, pubescent girl doing things to herself in a glade. And he gets excited about this and watches. And that's where he goes into pages and pages of description of this under 5 foot tall, pubescent girl, and describes her breasts and everything, which haven't properly formed and all this. He goes into about 3 pages in loving detail of what she's doing to herself and how exciting it all is. And then the fairies catch him watching, and he's pursued through the forest by all these horrible little creatures who pursue him right back to the cottage. He spends a night after being stung by bees, and so everything in nature disapproves of what he's doing. There's subliminal stuff going there. Everything in nature disapproves of what he just did. And he gets stung so badly that his whole body swells up. The next morning, he wakes up, and lo and behold, who comes to visit him? The pubescent girl. And she heals all his wounds instantly, and he's excited again and all this. And I skipped over the entire pages of the things because the minute I ran into that, I was so disgusted that I went, I'm not going to inflict this on myself reading these pages. I'm able for all sorts of horror, but I'm not able for this sort of horror. And participating in the lasciviousness and enjoyment in that, it did disgust me, So I don't know if the rest of the book is going to be about a relationship with this woman or not. There was an adult woman turned up in it. I only found her attractive as well, apparently. But neither of them seemed quite of this world. One was a gypsy and the other one was supposed to be a supernatural being. So presumably that's how he got away. I don't know how you get away, how a publisher sits there in a publisher's office going, oh, this is fine. I don't know how you get away with that. But if you write a whole book and you say, no, you don't understand, it's a fairy. It wasn't really a girl. And I did point that out from the first scene onwards, that it's actually a supernatural being and it's not a girl. So it's okay. And even though nature and everything was following me and disapproving of me, the fairy wasn't and everything. And she's not a girl, so it's not breaking any laws, or anything on publishing that kind of content. um, but like, why would you? And why would people read it? And are there good reviews on it? Well, apparently not, because he's been at this sort of thing before, and apparently he was at that sort of thing way back in the fog. So I'm really glad I didn't read his other books, because I wouldn't. I mean, I when I looked at the book, usually you'd read the blurb, right? You actually do look at the cover design, and I liked the little map inside of the woods. I thought it was nice. I thought, nice adventure, fantasy story. It might be a very light book, but I'll just quickly go through it and I might like it. There's a picture of him in the woods in the back. I wouldn't like to meet him in the woods personally, because it's just, people don't always believe what they write in their books. But I think this one is, personally, my personal opinion is that this is indicative that there's something wrong with this man. So I wouldn't like to meet him anywhere, I have to say. And I won't be reading any more of his books. So it's a pity in a way, because the descriptions of nature were nice, as I say. We don't really get enough of that in adventure books, And I think, in a way, there's a lot of people want to go back to nature, and they don't want to. I have a book there I'm meaning to read, Lark Rise at Candleford, and it's about country life in England, but it's from a time past, and a lot of people don't want to read about modern country life, or are very interested in descriptive passages in books. And I'm very interested in descriptive passages, just not the passages that he's doing about underage sex. And although he didn't have intercourse with the girl, the supernatural girl, pubescent supernatural girl, he watched. So it's just so creepy and disgusting, and ugh. And before I'd gotten to that bit, I was enjoying those descriptions of nature, but I found the writing very hackneyed. And I'm not just saying that because I got to that bit and then decided the guy was a creep. I was thinking that before, and I was thinking, will I go on with this book? But the descriptions of nature were nice. So I was carrying on. And I was saying, okay, I'll go on with the book until I'm not enjoying it. So I'm officially not enjoying it now. And I would avoid... A person like this, I would avoid all of his books, because when you read reviews, here's a user review with and it's from storygraph.com reviews, right? And this is Paperback Whiplash's review. And it says, sorry, I have to find the little bit. Okay, Herbert, this is the author's name, James Herbert, brings in new characters throughout the novel, gives them detailed backstories just to kill them off in the over-the-top deaths caused by the fog. So that's the fog that they're reviewing there. But they do say that Herbert in the fog, this is a review of another book, but to show you that this goes back a while, this sort of interest in his books, Herbert tries to emotionally manipulate me into caring about these characters, and I don't get invested at all. And I mean over the top pedophilic rape, orgy turn mass murder, suicide scenarios. So pedophilia is mentioned there. So, and it doesn't match the tone of the rest of the book. That's what happened to me. That's what made me lose sleep. That when I got to this bit, I went, oh my God, instantly, the minute he started going on about this, even though I was expecting some sex scenes in it, because it had sort of warned you in the front, And I went, oh my God, and lost sleep over the one paragraph that I read. It just kind of disturbed me in that, deeply sick sort of content does tend to. So, and it was shocking because it came out of nowhere in the middle of lovely countryside, but you were not meant to be shocked by it. you were meant to be excited by it as well. So you're sort of on his side somehow. There was very much of that sense. And I wasn't. Like, he wasn't kind of counting on you to be repulsed by it. That's what's really disgusting about it. It doesn't, I don't have a problem with people discussing those topics, but it depends on where you stand on them, doesn't it? This is you don't have to like everything that characters do in books and everything, but some things are just so beyond the pale that you can't carry on with the book, and you lose people as an author. You just can't carry on. As an author writing for readers, at that point they just can't carry on if they are so repulsed. So the small breast thing apparently is a big thing with them, and it was mentioned in that book as well. But I have a feeling that small breasts and the pubescent things are ideas linked up, and you'll probably find that he likes them very innocent as well, because she didn't mind at all that he was watching her, and she came around to visit the next day and everything, and he's probably going to start painting that now as innocent, and innocent people are okay with this kind of behavior. You see, it's just really repulsive. Another review here. So the spoilers here for on Goodreads that somebody's doing a review. Thomas Strumquist is doing a review here. He gave it a 1-star rating called a no-brainer. Admittedly well written and alluring into this thing, descended into a cesspool of fairy tale cliches and tasteless porn. Well, tasteless porn, pedophilic porn is really way out there in terms of tasteless porn. You can go pretty far out with writing porn into the tasteless arena without worrying about it getting tasteless, because it's considered in nice circles tasteless to talk about in public, and you're putting it in a book. So but I think he's talking about Marquis de Sade sort of ends of tasteless, when you're talking about pedophilic fantasies, you see. So but they don't mention, I don't think they mention actual pedophilia in this. They mention lesbianism. Lesbian lovemaking scene seemed very strange. I'm no expert here, but I did study anatomy and physiology, and I don't think that's how it works or should be done. Yeah, men writing about sex and how women see sex and how they feel during sex doesn't often work at all. And even the psychology of women. I knew a writer on Goodreads, and he had written a book, and it was grand. It was, supposed to be. I didn't read the whole thing, but he was telling me it was a novel, and that it started out. I read a couple of paragraphs of where it started, and they had a mother discussing her periods at the dinner table. Like, who does that? This was supposed to be very normal, and they were all talking and eating. And I went, okay, that's the bit at which the reader would stop reading your novel now, because it shows such a lack of understanding of both societal norms and women. That I don't think it's going anywhere. But this is twisted in that it works in horrific things as well, but the sex thing seems to want to work the perversion into the entertainment of the rest of the thing and selling it as an entertainment value thing. That's not entertainment to me in any sense. And the sex scenes, I might find them bit boring in parts if I was enjoying all the descriptions of nature and everything more. Even that is a little bit of a mix of things that would be, you'd have to be a very good writer to handle that. And I was having the same problem with them. I was finding the writing very hackneyed and cliched in the beginning until this element crept in, because that's so left of field, as they say. And the other ideas were very pedestrian. The writing itself was very pedestrian, nowhere near the skills of a John Lindquist or a Stephen King, nowhere near it. So, very poor review, spoilers for reasons. So, to continue their review, I'll just continue their review. They say, now, I never found a fairy tale story in an adult book that actually holds up. And this is no exception. There are fairies and witches and goblins and gnomes and whatever. Children know about them, but forget as they get older. I think there's a reason James Herbert picked that theme, to be honest with you. Because he was really indulging himself. Now, maybe it's unfair to say that at the beginning of the book, but I don't think it's unfair to say the book is, too disgusting to continue on reading, and why inflict that on yourself? And I wouldn't advise anybody read it unless you're a creep yourself, and take a dim view of the publishers, really. People can say, particularly Americans would say, oh, freedom of speech is a thing. But there are sort of decency laws, and there are laws around encouraging certain behaviors and trying to normalize them and things that you go, is this kind of falling on the right side of that law? Well, it must have done. It got published. And then it gets past some people, because there are people out there that are not shocked at somebody being excited about a pubescent child. A pubescent child is between about 12 and 16, let's say. That's just disgusting, and I don't care. I mean, when I was 16-year-old, I remember getting whistled at in the street by workmen, and I was dressed up with makeup on, I think, probably at 16. But he's talking about younger, But that's bad enough at 16. You can make arguments that somebody thought you were older, but uh, for some reason, some men are very into young women, and that in itself is repulsive. And it's kind of a societal problem. You see a lot of Japanese manga and everything, and they're clearly children's faces on the women. And you see grown men crushing on girls in school uniforms and everything. And that's a porn thing as well, or used to be girls in school uniforms. It's very disgusting, sexualizing children. And it has to do with, I believe, men's fear of adulthood, and adult women are very frightening to some men. And some men are stuck in sexually as children themselves. And I suspect that the author of this book might be in the sexual department a child. But that doesn't make it okay. He's an adult who has adult responsibilities, and that includes the responsibility not to distribute material which is so taboo by society in such a slimy, disgusting way that tries to paint it as something nice and entertaining and fun and everything, and everybody likes it, including the little supernatural pubescent being. It's really deeply creepy. So the reviewer goes on, still here then? Well, after the ping pong of explicit male-oriented lesbian porn. Yeah, it's for the male gaze, you see. It's not about women speaking about lesbian porn for women, or with women and for women. It's men's ideas of what lesbian porn are, the kind that says, hey, would you have sex in front of me? Because I'd like to watch that kind of silly fairy tale finally grows old. The author ups the ante by switching the first storyline to some sort of S&M abusive lesbian porn, and then pure assault with sexual overtones. So there's, fairy porn. basically. It's fairy porn. It's strange because it managed to be both explicit porn and once we suffered a big helping of insta love, hearts beating as one. And the cheesy like. So hearts beating at one, he's into it, you see. And odd that some reviewers aren't as shocked at the pubescent bit as I was. The rest, I don't really care because it's all adults doing things. So I don't care, you know. It's the children bit of it. It's disgusting because writers can be persuaders of people as well. I don't think you can be persuaded into that, but you can be persuaded to not part with your money to buy that kind of that is filth, not the porn, not porn in general, filth. If you're an adult, but the that particular type of porn featuring very a young child, Uh, so it's not just somebody in the chat says, "Oh no, it's not tasteless. It's illegal in most parts of the world." Yeah, you see, I think he got around this by saying that it's a novel and it's a supernatural being, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know, but it's really repulsive. So that's why I gave you a spoiler on that one. That one won't be going back to anybody else, any library or anything like that, because I would not have anybody read that they thought they were gonna read something with a little bit of fairy tale and a bit of dirt in it. They got much worse. So and there are ways around these things. You can mix weird genres without unless you're bringing in something really sick and twisted. John Lindquist managed it in one of the books of his that I read that was about zombies, and it went into horrible things about what happened to skin decomposing and all the areas of things that you are nightmare material and everything. But he wrote so well about it that it was okay. Like it wasn't my favorite book of his because it was a bit too gross for me, to be honest. I don't particularly like gore, or obviously I don't like that. Um, I don't mind dystopian stuff, and I've written dystopian stuff. There's one of my Donna Emerald ones, They Said There Was. That's a dystopian one called They Said There Was. And it's a bit along the lines of the Crichton idea. Um, Michael Crichton, who's a very good writer as well, quite often introduces psychological horror elements into his books. And the books will be a horror because there's some crisis unfolding. And in this, there's a pandemic crisis unfolding, but it becomes incredibly dystopian what is going on. And there's one person whose life is caught up in this, and it's about the events. So I think the Crichton one was, forget what it was, Outbreak or something like that. Again, he's somebody else that gets made into movies all the time. So, a lot of really good writers get made into movies, but in the movies, you have to have them that they're acceptable in some way to the audience, and that they pass the censorship boards and all this. And I don't know how this writer got friends in the publishing industry or publishers interested in him when he's putting that kind of content in his book. It's beyond me. But thank you for watching this. And you can't talk about just good reviews of things. I've been raving about Proust, and I had nothing bad really to say about him except the characters in the book, and so that he might be a woman hater and all this. I figured the way he was writing, he might be a woman hater, but I accepted that, and I still enjoy the books a lot, because they're not like totally, they are twisted. One of the volumes I was reading was quite twisted, but not in that direction. It was about people psychologically playing games with each other, and how relationships, that the sort of weird, there were very weird games going on in one of the relationships he had in the book, but it was nothing about anything like this weirdness, even though it's the one of the volumes I was talking about. Um, Somebody did a review and they said, "Oh, the books where everybody turns out to be gay." So it was gay, but it wasn't deviant, if you know what I mean, in the sense of it was deviant in the society at the time, but it wasn't as far out in the, people being repulsed by it direction for a modern reader to read. Maybe at the time it might have been, but there was a lot of coded stuff in it as well, you see. So it would have been semi-palatable probably, but that this isn't a palatable topic at all. But they said there is available on Amazon for people who are having any trouble in America with tariffs and things at the moment. I've suffered from tariffs. My first tariff blow this morning, where I bought a pen, and it's a beautiful writer's pen. I hope I don't lose it, because it was wildly expensive by the time I got finished paying for it. Trump's tariffs on things are creating havoc for anybody wanting to buy books. Obviously, in Ireland we paid 23%, I think it is, VAT on books imported anyway. But for the VAT depends on what country you're in or whether you pay VAT at all. And VAT is tariffs and VAT, so they're not unrelated in that the tariff, the supplier pays them, but the cost gets passed on to a consumer anyway. So buying my pen this morning, the pen was €24, but the shipping was where they made all the money. Now, shipping isn't a tax, it's decided by the person supplying the item. But they stuck on 3/4 of the price of the pen just for shipping. So the shipping was really high. Okay, fair enough. They got to maybe have a courier service that isn't a very cheap one going. But then they stuck on a tenner for tax as well, and the pen was only 24. So by the time I'd finished paying for it, I paid more than 100% the price of the thing again, So it was crazy. But what I want to say is that for American readers, at the moment, my books are available on Amazon.com as well. So you're buying them from your own country. You see, they're available in your own country. The other book is that one. Whoops. Oh no, a stack of books has gone. The other book is on Amazon.com as well. It's called The Q Affair, Donna Emerald, and that is a psychological thriller, no horror in that. This one is a dystopian horror. I suppose it would go into a horror genre, They said there was. And one of the books, not both of them, one of them is now available in Waterstones as well. So Waterstones allow you to order online or in the shop. So the Q Affair is available for Waterstone people as well. And Waterstones are a huge book chain in England and different parts of Europe. So I'm very pleased to get that one into Waterstones as well. So that's from a fellow writer. I wouldn't be going to a writer's dinner with James Herbert anytime soon. I won't be reading any of his books anytime soon. A bit of a negative book review, I think it's fair to say. Hackneyed writing, weird premise for a book, and way beyond tasteless, just repulsive. But there are many books out there, and I'm going to choose another lovely book from my shelf and have a rest before I pick up the next volume of Proust's Fugitive, because that's what I've been doing. I've been reading a volume and taking a rest, going off, reading another piece of fiction for a quickie read, and then back in to Proust again for a deeper read. Because I think reading Proust start to finish for me is a bad idea. I don't know what book I'm going to pick up next. I have a few things there. I want to read something light. Okay, maybe it'll be Larkspur Candleford. I don't know. See how it goes. Okay, so enjoy your day. I hope the sun is shining on you wherever you are. Bye bye.